You wake up on a beach, naked and afraid, but you feel a tingle of excitement because you found your next game, you found your next addiction, you found the thing that's going to take you to the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You found Rust. And I'm here the whole way through. While your family and friends tell you this is worse than a heroin addiction, I'm here to teach you the basics. Welcome to Rust and welcome to the 2024 Rust Beginner's Guide. I don't like to waste time, so let's just jump right into it. You're going to spawn on a beach with a rock and a torch. You're going to be killed multiple times, but it does not matter. Hit the G key, pop open your map, and find a place to call home. And by that, I mean a place that is away from anything interesting on the map. Look for monuments, look for roads, look for places that are by roads, but not monuments. Monuments would be the places with names on them. You're going to come to know, love, and hate some of these monuments, but for now, just remember that that's where all the players congregate, so you're going to want to stay away from those. Once you find the place on your map, mark it and start running towards it. As you're running to this location, pick up anything that you find on the ground. A few big ones to watch out for are wood, stone, cloth, and any food. If you find any food, eat it. In Rust, you don't start with a full HP bar, so getting that HP up is important because you might run into a naked with a rock, and it's better to have HP than not. Now, moving on, as you pick up cloth, you can craft bandages to heal yourself. You can also craft sleeping bags. Sleeping bags are basically spawn-in points. The way death and spawning in Rust works is if you die, you're obviously going to lose all your stuff and start with a rock and a torch, but more importantly, you're also going to have to go back to the beach. So if that beach is a 30-minute run away from your base, you're going to have to run all the way back to your base. The way to circumvent this is to use sleeping bags. As you're running to the location you want to get to, if you have enough cloth, drop sleeping bags because it's going to make the whole experience a lot less aggravating because you'll be able to spawn in closer to where you want to be. If it's the start of a wipe, it's very likely that most players won't have advanced weapons. If this is the case, feel free to craft a spear using wood that you pick up, or a bow using cloth and wood. Also make sure you craft arrows because a bow doesn't really do anything without arrows to shoot. Once you get to the location that you marked on your map for your base, look around. If you see any big bases, a lot of fighting, or anything that makes you think, oh boy, it's time to find a new place. Once you found a place that you can actually call home, it's time to start gathering resources. So right now you've only got a rock and a torch and whatever you picked up. Your main goal now is to craft a stone hammer and a stone pickaxe. This is going to make farming a lot easier. So first things first, you're going to want to knock down a tree. If you hit the red X, you're going to be able to farm more resources. Next up, you're going to want to be able to farm a stone node. They're going to look like this, very grayish in color. Hit that shiny place, and again, you're going to get a little boost in resources. With the rock, you're going to be able to mine less resources than you would with a pickaxe or a hatchet. So what you're going to want to do is craft a hatchet first. Once that hatchet has been crafted, use that to gather more wood. And once you have enough wood, craft a stone pickaxe. At this point, mine a few more nodes, and eventually you should have enough resources to build a tool cupboard. When it comes to building in Rust, tool cupboards are basically the holy grail. If someone has access to your tool cupboard, they can build whatever they want onto your base. So for instance, they could completely build around all your doors and make your base inaccessible to anyone, including yourself. The tool cupboard and access to the tool cupboard should be protected at all costs. One thing to note is flooring can be built by anyone, whether or not they have access to your tool cupboard. It will only be twig flooring. So don't panic if you see a few twig floors attached to your base after you've logged out and logged back in. Now let's talk base building. So to build a base in Rust, you're going to need two things, a building plan and a hammer. The building plan is going to allow you to lay down structures, and the hammer is going to allow you to upgrade those structures. When you lay down a structure, it's going to be twig at first. Twig is a very easy to break thing, so you're going to want to upgrade anything that you want to keep ASAP. Now, for your basic first base build, we're going to do a 2x1, but we're going to do this in multiple steps. The first step is going to be to create a basic box. So to do this, you're going to lay down a floor, 3 walls, a door space, and a ceiling. Once you've got those laid down, you're going to want to upgrade everything to stone. You're going to need to craft a wood door and 2 locks. You're going to put the wood door down, a lock on that wood door, and then you're going to put your tool cupboard down and a lock on the tool cupboard. When you're placing your tool cupboard, make sure to put it in the far right or left hand corners of your base. This is just to give you as much space as possible to lay down things like a workbench. We're going to get into that later, but just note that that's something that you're going to need to lay down at some point. So at this point, you should have a tool cupboard down, you should have your base built, and your tool cupboard should be filled with resources. The reason this is so important is because bases decay. Decay is basically what happens when your tool cupboard runs out of resources, and the base will then start losing HP. Also worth noting is the larger your base, the more resources is going to take to keep that base alive. This is called upkeep. So small bases take less resources to keep them going, and big bases take a lot of resources. Some clan bases need to be refilled almost every 6 hours because the bases are that massive. So in the case of Rust, size definitely does matter. And now it is time to craft a sleeping bag. A sleeping bag requires 30 cloth, which means it's time for us to go over how to get cloth. The way you're going to get cloth is pretty simple. There's one way, which involves running around. You're going to find hemp, you can pick that up and smoke it, and if you just tried to smoke it, you're a little too high. What you can actually do is you're going to pick the hemp plants, and you're going to get cloth and seeds. If you plant the seeds, a new plant is going to grow. Don't really worry about growing anything right now because that's a whole nother system that is going to be talked about in another guide. It goes outside the scope of a beginner's guide, in my opinion. The goal here is to give you the basic knowledge that you need to start Rust, not make you an expert at growing weed. So now let's start talking about growing weed, and if you just got confused, again, you're probably a little bit too high, stop the video here and come back later. So now for everybody who's not too high, and David who put himself into a coma over there and can't even reach the spacebar, let's talk about the best way to get cloth, and this would be to run along a road or a path, break some barrels open. You're going to find things like rope and thread. You can go to a recycler, which is going to be at any major monument. You can recycle those items, and what you're going to get back is cloth, along with a bunch of other stuff, but we're not going to worry about that yet. So again, you're going to get cloth back, and you should get it in a big amount. At this point, you should have enough cloth to craft a sleeping bag and put it down. Also, you can craft yourself a full set of clothing because that's going to give you a little bit of extra protection. If you're good at defending yourself, this is the point where you're going to want to craft a bow and some arrows. So now you're fully clothed up, you got a bow and an arrow, you're no longer naked, but you're still a noob. Let's go into the next steps. The next thing after this that you're going to want to build is a furnace. A furnace is going to be used to refine ores. The two ores that you're basically always going to be refining are metal ore and sulfur ore. There's also high quality ore, but there's better ways to get high quality metal than refining that ore. So what you're going to want to do is, to get metal ore, you're going to need to farm these nodes using your pickaxe, and to get sulfur ore, you're going to need to farm these nodes using your pickaxe. Sulfur ore, or sulfur, is going to be used mainly to craft gunpowder, make explosives, make bullets, and everything that you need to really get to that next level of PvP or raiding. Metal ore, on the other hand, is going to be used to create metal fragments. These are going to be used to craft guns, but more importantly, they're going to be used to craft doors that are a lot harder to break through. You shouldn't even be logging off until you have metal doors, by the way. And to progress into the next stages of Rust, at which point you'll have a workbench, a blueprint table, and a few other things. So first things first, for the furnace, you're gonna need low-grade fuel. So low-grade fuel can be used for a few things. In the beginning, it's gonna be used for crafting furnaces, small furnaces to be exact. You can also use it to power cars, boats, and even these weird makeshift-looking helicopters. The way you're going to go about getting low-grade fuel is going to vary based on how skilled you are and how advanced you want to get. The beginner way would be to kill animals. You're going to be able to find animal fat and some cloth. You can combine these two to make low-grade fuel. The major problem with this method is you're relying on finding animals, which can take some time and is pretty cumbersome, and you're not really going to get a high amount of low-grade fuel from this method. The next way of getting low-grade fuel is to break open red barrels. These barrels are going to have low-grade fuel, and in addition to that, they're going to have crude oil. Crude oil is extremely important because this is the more advanced way of getting low-grade fuel, and that would be refining crude oil. The way that you refine crude oil is you take it to a refinery. Refineries are going to exist at some monuments, and they're going to be scattered throughout the map. Players can build refineries, and a lot of the time, once you get a couple days into wipe, you're going to find them scattered throughout as players just drop them or put them outside their base to use. Generally, what I like to do when I'm looking for a refinery is go to the harbor monument. This monument will have a refinery in it. You run to that refinery, you put in wood, you put in your crude oil, you let it run, and you're going to be able to get low-grade fuel. With the low-grade fuel, you can craft a furnace. With that furnace, you can take wood, you put in your metal ores, make sure you split those equally between the two slots, run the furnace, and you'll get metal fragments. With the metal fragments, you can craft a metal door, or a sheet metal door. Once you've crafted this door, you're going to need to take off your wood door. You do this by first setting that red button on the lock to be green, so you unlock your lock. Then you pick up your lock. After that, you generally need to open your door. Then you can pick up your door. At this point, you're going to be able to put down your sheet metal door and put your lock on top of the sheet metal door. Also, a good thing to note here is if you're looking to pick up items throughout your base, an easy way to do that is with the hammer. If you take your hammer out, you can use that to pick up any item except for tool cupboard. Tool cupboards, once placed, cannot be picked up. So it is important that you get that placement correct because you won't get a second chance at that. Circling back to the metal door, once you've put that metal door on, your base is a lot harder to raid. But you still have a box and there's only one door to all the loot, so we're going to need to expand the base at this point. The way you expand your base is you're going to want to lay down one more floor, put all the walls and ceilings on along with the door opening, and then you're going to want to put down a triangle floor. The triangle floor is going to be what is called an airlock. Airlocks are extremely important in Rust because they make sure that no one can get into your base when you're trying to exit your base. So the way an airlock works is you're going to have one wall and two door frames on the airlock, along with a ceiling, because if you don't put a ceiling in, you're just a bit dumb. The way the airlock should work with the two doors is when one door is open, it is going to be blocking entry into the other door. Additionally, when you're going through doors, you should never have both open at the same time. However, setting the doors up so that they block entry to each other makes it so that even if you do happen to open both doors at the same time because you're a bit of a dumbass, raiders or attackers still can't get in. So what you're going to want to do is put two metal doors here, and now your base is going to be a lot harder to raid. They're going to need to blow through those two airlock doors, and then an additional door to get to your TC. I've got kids, so this is usually where I log off, because it's a good 30 minutes to an hour to get to this point, especially if you're playing on a high population server where players tend to kill each other quite often. That said, this is a YouTube video, so you're not going to have to wait a whole day to get to the next part. You will have to wait through me asking you to subscribe, because hopefully these guides do help, and by subscribing, you support my channel and tell me that I should keep going. Also, it makes the algorithm way more likely to suggest my content to you, and hopefully I will be seeing you again. Now, let's get back to the video, because I don't like to waste time, except when I ask you to subscribe, because if I don't ask someone to subscribe at least 3 times in a video, they're very unlikely to subscribe. I don't know why you guys are like this, but it's the people I'm dealing with, man. So let's talk next steps, because at this point, all you're doing is snorting it, and we want to get to intravenous. So the way this is going to work is now it's all about advancing your Rust character and building the best items that you can build. To do this, you're going to need workbenches. The way workbenches work is there's 3 tiers. You've got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. If you didn't know, 3 is larger than 1. 3 or tier 3 workbenches mean that you can craft tier 3 items and down. Tier 2, you can craft tier 2 items and down, and tier 1, you can craft tier 1 items and down. You need a tier 1 workbench to craft a tier 2 workbench, and a tier 2 workbench to craft a tier 3 workbench. If you're looking to get a really big jump on things, you can actually use outposts to craft a tier 2 workbench and then run it back to your base, but that's a pretty baller move, and that's not what we're going to be doing in this video. This is a beginner's guide after all. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to craft a tier 1 workbench. To do this, you are going to need scrap. So now it's time to talk scrap. How do you get scrap? You get scrap by running monuments, opening boxes, Using key cards to open doors, so there's green, blue, and red key cards. Red key cards are for the toughest monuments, they get you the best loot. Blue key cards are middle monuments, they get you decent loot, and green key cards get you some very basic stuff. You need a green key card generally to get a blue one, and a blue key card generally to get a red one. There are exceptions to this rule, but I'm just throwing all this out there in a beginner's guide, so don't worry about the exceptions yet. Two monuments that are worth noting while we're talking about monuments are Outpost, which is a safe zone where you can buy a bunch of stuff, you can gamble, and you can generally hang out with a bunch of annoying fucks who are playing Rust. The same thing is true of Bandit Camp. These are also the only safe zones where you can find recyclers and things like that. Other safe zones would include Ranch and Fishing Village. Fishing Village you can go to buy boats, Ranch you can go to buy horses. Both are very good for traversing the map quickly. But Outpost and Bandit Camp, those are the two main locations that you're going to want to use if you're looking for a safe zone or a place to gamble. Because yes, a lot of you are degenerates. Let's face it, Rust is not a game for normal people. We're not normal folk. We're special. So let's jump on that short bus and go back to our base. So now that you're at your base, you know how to get scrap. You're running the roads, getting scrap by breaking barrels or opening boxes, or just running monuments like a boss. You have enough scrap to craft a workbench. Once you've crafted a workbench, if you're within range of that workbench, you can craft those tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 items based on the workbench. We just talked about this. A nice thing that you can craft with a workbench is a blueprint table. A blueprint table is nice because that is another way to research items in addition to your workbench. So the way a workbench works is it has a tier tree. So you've got to research all the items down to the one that you want to be able to craft to be able to research that item and then get that item as a blueprint that you can craft or learn that blueprint. If you wanted to circumvent this process because it takes a while to learn blueprints, it's a lot of scrap and it's generally annoying, what you can do is find that item in the wild, take that item back to your blueprint table, put it into that blueprint table, collect the amount of scrap that the blueprint table tells you need, put that into the blueprint table, research the item, and then you've got to click on that blueprint and learn it. So at this point, you should know how to set up a basic base in Rust, how to put all those basic items down, and how to progress your character. Now comes the hard part. You've got to learn everything else about Rust. There's a lot of avenues that you can take to get into Rust, and there's a lot of different playstyles out there. The most basic playstyle that players take is they get to this point and they're just going to start running monuments. You run the highest monument that you can, you get all the loot that you can, you recycle the loot that you're not going to be using, and you take everything back to your base. You research the good items that you find, and then you use some of the other items that you find to craft more of those items. Generally what this means is you're crafting guns and things like that. Also, you might be able to find a metal pickaxe, which is going to be a lot better, same with a metal hatchet. And at the end game for farming, you're going to have a jackhammer and a chainsaw. These are going to be the fastest way to farm resources, so if you find them, use those things wisely. And like I said, this is the most common playstyle that people take. If you're more advanced or you want to get into just a different side of Rust, you could become a farmer trying to trade your wares for the next item up. You could also become some sort of resource farmer that tries to trade resources for the next item up. You could join a clan. You could camp out by outpost and just PvP and try and build your base up that way, or you could go to a server that's simply PvE and play at your own speed. The great thing about Rust is that there are so many options and so many different play styles. It's why players like me come back year after year, and it's what makes this game more addictive than heroin. You can play solo. You could play with your best friend who you're soon going to lose because it's Rust. You could play with a quad, 3 other people who are soon not going to be friends, or you could play with a whole clan that's probably going to implode and do it in a very interesting way. You could become a trader going base to base trying to make friends and send them to your shop. You could become a trapper trying to get people to come into your shop, and I say that in quotation marks, and die to a trap that you've set. You could become a player that's a complete pacifist playing on a PvE server, or you could become the next big PvPer, spending more time than Shroud to get none of the money. Rust is a game that has so many opportunities, so many options, and so many avenues. You could spend a lifetime perfecting different playstyles and never get through them all. You can become an electrician, a plumber. You can become a PvPer, or you can become a PvEer. There are a million different ways to play Rust, and no one way is wrong. Don't feel compelled to play on the official servers. If the game takes too much time, try to go to a server that has 2x the resources, 3x the resources, or even a server that's PvE. There are friendly servers out there that you can play on that won't get you killed instantly, where players will help you out. And as a beginner, those are the servers that you should seek out. These are called community servers, and this would be where you're going to want to go. Once you're ready for the completely toxic and what many people would call full Rust experience, you can go to a neo-Nazi rally and experience. You can go to the official Rust servers and go to one of those 600 population servers and experience the death, destruction, and inevitable disappointment that Rust will lead to. Because Rust is a game with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You can take hours of someone's time, or they can take days of yours. It's a game that's all about adventure, destruction, and doing it all again. Feel adrenaline as you fight enemies, and you'll feel utter destruction as you log in and find nothing left. That is what the Rust experience is all about, and the only one who's going to be more disappointed than you when that happens is your parents. Because let's be honest, this is all that you're going to be playing for a while now. Anyways, I hope I got you a good start into the world of Rust. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below.